Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Forgot my cup. There's my cup.
As long as you don't forget.
Professional. We are so professional.
We are. Hey, Tripp, I know the editor. There's a pretty good chance that's gonna make the final cut.
Oh, I'm sure it will. And it's fun. I mean, listen, that's what makes it great.
This just proves that we are not AI. That's what that proves. We are authentically intelligent, not artificially intelligent. Hey,
wait, you're saying we're intelligent, Phil?
Oh, absolutely. Well, maybe we ought to move on. Hey, Tripp, I and the viewers, hey, we know something you don't, and I know that's pretty rare. We know who the feature artist is. The question is, can we trip you up? That's the question.
Okay.
In this episode, the challenge is going to be to name 6 of their top 10 hits. That's in the A-side segment. In the B-side, we go beyond the wax and share some facts, including the real story about the group's name. And then, of course, we close with Tripp's triple play selection. This artist was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2000. Perhaps the hottest recording act back in 1966, 60 years ago. And they're a high-volume streaming group even today. The group, the Lovin Spoonful.
Okay.
They had 10 top 40 hits, and as we talked about in a previous episode, including their first 7 singles consecutively were top 40 hits. Tripp and viewers, I'm just wondering if you can name just 6. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee, give you a second to think about it, and then you can fire away when ready.
Well, Do You Believe in Magic was a big song for them, and that was probably one of their first hits in 1966.
That is indeed on the list.
Daydream.
That's correct. That was a year later.
Did You Ever Have to Make Up Your Mind?
Yes. Do you happen to know what movie that was written for?
No, I don't.
What's Up, Tiger Lily by Woody Allen.
Okay.
I didn't know that until I got ready for this. So you've already got 3 of 6.
Okay. Brick wall time. I got to think about this now.
You are spent some time in a large metropolitan market, and there are different seasons in that.
Oh, Summer in the City. Duh.
Summer in the City. That was their number 1 hit. That was back in 66. We only need 2 more. Well, there are multiple what are considered music cities in this country.
Oh, Nashville Cats.
Nashville Cats. You've got 5. You only need 1 more. They had one had to do with weather, a weather condition, something about something hitting the roof. Boy,
Rain on the roof.
That may have been the easiest clue that I gave you. You got to 6 out of 10. Let's go through the entire list. Summer in the City, Daydream, Did You Ever Have to Make Up Your Mind? Nashville Cats, Do You Believe in Magic? You Didn't Have to Be So Nice.
Oh, yeah.
That one actually peaked at number 10, Rain on the Roof. Then there are also Darling, Be Home Soon. That was written for the movie You're a Big Boy Now. I recall that one. 2 I'm really not familiar with, to be honest. 6 o'clock. And the final one is She Is Still a Mystery. There was one song that I was surprised that was not on the list, and that was Younger Girl.
That was the Critters. I'll save that for the B-side because
You'll save that for the B-side. Okay,
that's for the B-side.
We're already on our way to the B-side. Just as a reminder, there are 4 other Trippin' Up episodes available on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. That way you're notified when new releases come out, and you can even do a little binging as we get into the summer months. On the B-side, this is This is the section where, while we've already talked about the wax, now we kind of get into the facts.
First of all, we were talking about Younger Girl. That was done by the Critters. Don Ciccone is the person who was with the Critters, and they were a group actually from New Jersey. And Don was the Critters had a couple of hits, Younger Girl and one other song. But Don ended up going with the Four Seasons and played with Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. And he was part of that group in the 1970s that had those hits. And Don played with them for a number of years, passed away a few years ago. That's not new. The story of John Sebastian. Now, he was, of course, the principal writer, and he was the lead guy for the Lovin Spoonful. And by the way, I guess we should mention that the Lovin Spoonful were part of the folk scene in New York City that was talked about in Creek Alley by Mamas and the Papas. And Zaldovsky was the other member that I mentioned. John and Saul formed the Spoonful. John Sebastian, after the Lovin Spoonful broke up, John was in the midst of a crisis, fear. He didn't think he could write another song. And he went to Woodstock just as a spectator. He had no intention of participating. And with all the issues that they had with logistics for Woodstock, they found they needed somebody to go on stage. So John was back to say, hey, could you go on stage, do about a half hour? And so John went out with a guitar and played for a half hour. And that kind of really, the acceptance that John got said, well, maybe I can make music a career. And in the mid-1970s, he was back in the recording studio and was asked to do the theme song to a television show called Kotter. And so he did this song. It was called Welcome Back, because it was a school teacher going back to his high school to teach. Well, the problem was the show, nowhere in the theme song did it say Kotter. So that's why they changed the name of the show to Welcome Back Kotter. And of course, if you want to split hairs, that technically was the first television theme to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now remember, the Billboard Hot 100 hadn't been established until 1958. First, and TSOP by MFSB was #1 in 1974, but that was a version of the Soul Train theme, which Don Cornelius regretted for the rest of his life not getting involved in. So technically, that was the first #1 song from a TV show that hit #1 in 1976, followed quickly in 1977 by the theme from SWAT by Rhythm Heritage. And my last John Sebastian little bit. Now, John Sebastian in the 1990s released a solo record, and the title track was relatable to anyone who lived in the city. It was along the lines of Summer in the City, and it was called Tar Beach, because people would go out on their roofs, and that's where they would sit there and sun themselves in the city. And they called it Tar Beach because, let's face it, roofs were made of, they had tar to, most roofs, I should say, apartment building roofs, had tar on them. It was very, very hot. But that Tar Beach was the song, and I remember playing it. And John Sebastian, we did an interview with him at the radio station. It was a very, very engaging, great guy, and he still does performing. But the Lovin Spoonful, of course, went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I think they've all made nice since then. But again, there were some hard feelings when the group originally broke up. And I don't recall the Lovin Spoonful ever having a reunion of per se. John would go out and perform, and he had the rights to this the group name Lovin Spoonful. So there's John Sebastian and Lovin Spoonful.
I was surprised they were in the Rock Hall. Why would they be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame versus, let's say, Three Dog Night?
Well, okay, what you said, and I think you got to look at when they went in, because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame started in the mid-1980s. So a lot of the 60s groups were among the first artists to go in. Remember, the rule was you had to be out 25 years. So a lot of these groups would hit in the 25 to 30 year range. But it seems like after you get 30 years or so, you kind of get forgotten. And there were so many great groups of the 1960s that have been kind of forgotten. And again, I'm going to put the Monkees are a group. Everybody keeps saying the Monkees should be in. And in terms of what they did, maybe they should. The Grassroots were certainly one of the big top 40 groups. Three Dog Night, I think, definitely deserves to be in. But then you also now get into the 70s. A lot of the singer-songwriters were recognized more so than studio groups per se, because, you mentioned Three Dog Night, they didn't write their own songs. And I think that's a part of that. They were kind of the studio group type thing. Fifth Dimension is another group I would mention right off the bat that probably deserves to be in there.
So let's shift gears here a little bit, Tripp. I was a little bit surprised to find out what was the true meaning or inspiration behind the group's name. Now, from what you understand, what was the inspiration for the name, the Lovin Spoonful?
I in my mind, when you said the inspiration for it, I was thinking again, it was drug oriented and heroin, but I got a funny feeling that's not it. But that was what I thought right off the bat.
That's what I found out. I always thought it was too. I thought that's what the inspiration was, but according to multiple sources, the inspiration was actually a lyric from a old blues song by John Hurt, Mississippi John Hurt, that John Sebastian was very familiar with. It was called the Coffee Blues. It was actually a tribute to Maxwell House Coffee. Isn't that interesting? But in the lyrics, I'm going to tell you about a girl I know. She's got a lovin' spoonful. And in true kind of blues fashion or rock music fashion, it has a double meaning. Lovin' spoonful could be a little sugar to make life sweeter.
Yeah, I buy that. I'll buy that.
But apparently it's more about physical activities that makes life a little bit of sweeter and a little bit of dose of lovin'. So that apparently is the true inspiration for the Lovin Spoonful. Tripp, do you have anything else before we get into your triple play selection?
Triple play selection. I am ready to go, my friend.
Then let's rock and roll. What do you got?
All right. Well, the triple play selection for the Lovin Spoonful, you've got to include Summer in the City, which was for a number of years the #1 summer song. It was chosen by Entertainment Weekly as the top song of summer, and you'll always find it on a summer songs playlist when you're counting down the top summer songs. Number 2, Do You Believe in Magic, which is probably their biggest hit. And number 3, because I've always been partial to this one, Nashville Cats, because again, John Sebastian, it was a tribute to Nashville. And listen, you got to remember that back in the 60s, country music was based in Nashville, but there was not the country crossovers that we would have. And country music was traditional and was twangy, and those Nashville Cats could pick a mean guitar and banjo, and that's what we're singing about. And that's why I put that song on my 3-song playlist.
You can't go wrong with those 3. I'm going to go ahead and pick one, and I'm going to pick Darling, Be Home Soon. That's one I can listen to over and over and over again. Hey, what's your favorite Lovin Spoonful song? Please let us know in the comments. You can follow Tripp in a lot of different ways. You can listen to him on weekday afternoons on Q105.3 in Savannah, Georgia, WRHQ.com and WTRSradio.com. You can also hear Tripp on. Those links they're right down there on the TuneIn radio app. He's got a show called The Music Yearbook. That's on Facebook and various stations, including Vinyl 91.9 WBNJ and on 107.5 WRUU. Yes, I repeated it on purpose, in Savannah, Georgia. Hey, thanks for joining us. Keep the coffee brewing, keep the conversation flowing, and keep those memories spinning.